Hey, it's Alex, and I'm here for another pre-segment intro. You know what that means? We messed up. Spoiler alert, in today's Inside Look, we talk about the Trump administration's new visa rule. If you don't know, the rule basically states any international student enrolled in an online-only degree program this fall must return to their home country. I'm here now because I have good news and bad news. The good news, well, great news, is that the Trump administration decided to drop its bid to bar foreign students. The bad news is I found that out just after we wrapped filming this segment. We were taking the lights down and putting our pajamas back on, and I got an Apple News notification that they reversed this rule. Don't get me wrong, I'm really thrilled that this is the case. I just wish I had waited another day to film this piece. I spend half of the segment talking about how ridiculous this new rule is and how it makes no sense, so I think the FBI must have been listening in or something and realized that I was right. I also mentioned that the news around this topic is ever changing. Hindsight is 20/20, okay? We have decided to still release this piece because this is an important story. Even though a crisis was averted this time, there will always be a next time. And it's important for us to continue to talk about these issues and understand all the facts. With all this in mind, enjoy today's segment. Welcome back to Inside Ambition, a casual news show where we talk about all things Drexel. I'm your host, Alexandra George. Every week, I always expect to run into some issues when coming up for an idea for each segment. Drexel students as a target audience is a pretty niche group. How am I supposed to know what interests you? I'm not on TikTok. And what's this I keep seeing about cake? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Can someone please explain it to me in the comments? Even though I'm not up to date with all this lingo, I'm pretty up to date with the news. And without fail, there always just seems to be something absolutely insane happening in the world that I can't not talk about. As much as I need content, universe, if you're listening, it's okay if you lay off the craziness just for a little while. It's really just getting to be too much. ICE recently announced that all international students must leave the United States if they are attending universities that have announced they will be operating online only in the fall. If not, they will face deportation and they could potentially be barred from the country entirely. What? Did I just read that right? Really, universe? You've gone too far. Our very first interview on this show was with rising second-year international student Majo Garcia. Aw, baby Alex, how cute was she? Don't we just want to squeeze her cheeks? At the time, Majo was struggling to get back to her home country of Honduras based on the travel restrictions due to COVID-19. And to this day, Majo is still not home. She has scheduled and booked multiple flights, but they all ended in disappointment. So how is ICE just able to kick international students out when all these travel restrictions are in place? And why would they even want to do this? Now, let's take an inside look. There are over 1.2 million international students enrolled in the U.S. to attend university, and a third of the 8,700 universities that house international students have announced that they plan to operate at least partially, if not completely, remote this fall. Most international students at Drexel are on what is called an F1 visa. This visa not only allows them to stay in the U.S. until the completion of their degree program, but also it grants them the ability to work with restrictions so that they can complete their co-ops. However, these visas require them to be enrolled as full-time students, So it usually limits them to only 3 credit hours of online instruction per term. ICE first granted an exception to this rule when universities first started moving online, so international students could finish out their spring and summer semesters. Oh, I just realized, some of you might not even know what ICE is. Just so you know, I haven't been referring to the legendary rapper and actor Ice-T this whole time. He would never do something like this. How dare you even suggest that? ICE is a federal law enforcement agency under the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. ICE stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and its mission is, quote, to protect America from the cross-border crime and illegal immigration that threaten national security and public safety. I know what you're thinking. What do international students and remote learning have to do with national security and public safety? Trust me, I asked the same question. But under ICE's jurisdiction is the Student and Exchange Visitor Program, so they have the power to kick students out of the country because of a global pandemic they're not responsible for. Speaking of responsibility in regard to the pandemic, it's no secret that the Trump administration has been anti-immigration from the very beginning. In fact, 3 of his first 5 executive orders in office had to do with restricting immigration to the United States. And believe it or not, a global pandemic is one of the easiest times to further restrict immigration. Who would have thunk? And some say that Trump is using this as an opportunity to crack down on immigration since the election is coming up this November. And just as a side note, don't forget to register to vote. You can be registered to vote in more than one state. So if you voted in the primaries somewhere other than PA, don't worry. But in Pennsylvania, the youth vote has more influence than in other states. So it's important that we all register here so our vote can really count. We'll make sure to leave a link to register to vote in the description below. So what is the point of further limiting immigration right now? What's the administration afraid of? That immigrants are going to bring the virus here or something? I think that's a little late. Get this. The state of Florida just had more cases in one day than the entire U.S. did in the 2 months at the start of the pandemic. And congratulations! Florida also has triple the number of total cases than the entire country of China has had. Does this mean we're going to start calling it the Florida virus now? But maybe, just maybe, let's give Trump the benefit of the doubt here. I mean, he just wore a mask for the first time in public. Maybe he's finally starting to realize how serious the virus is, and he wants to protect all the potential immigrants entering the country from contracting it. Even though so many international students, just like Maho, have been unable to make it home these past several months, when it comes to deportation, emergency flights can be made and coordinated between countries easily. Convenient, right? I think we can all recognize that distance learning is a challenge. And to anyone that had to relocate due to COVID, whether you moved back to your childhood home like me or moved out of state, I think we all have learned that your environment greatly impacts your learning ability. Some of us like to study in busy spaces like the dining hall or coffee shops to stay focused, and others like to have peace and quiet in the library or the DAC on game day. You can always find an empty seat there. But remote learning in another country is a whole nother ballgame for a plethora of reasons. The easiest one to understand is time zone differences. It is simply not equitable to expect the same sort of instruction and learning to happen over a 12-hour time difference. I mean, isn't it hard enough when your professor waits a couple hours to reply to your email? Plus, not all countries have reliable internet access like we do. I mean, unless you have AT&T, of course. And these issues are just barely scratching the surface. Countries all over the world are operating under crises of their own, and many students will face struggles back home that will make focusing on their education next to impossible. Since the Trump administration is all about the economy and money and math, and the argument of how this affects actual human beings and their lives just simply isn't enough. Let's talk numbers. International students make up 5.5% of the higher education population, and they brought over $41 billion into American universities for the 2018-2019 academic year alone, and supported over 450,000 jobs. Universities rely on this money to subsidize in-state tuition for other students. Not to mention, schools across the country have started to close their doors for good due to COVID cutbacks. And if universities can't open for in-person instruction, they're going to be missing a lot of money and face even worse consequences this fall. Listen, I am all for a complete overhaul of our higher education system and for reassessing the financial aspects of college, but I think we can all agree it shouldn't need to be done this way. Not only do international students need their universities, but universities are just as reliant on them. Drexel sent out an email earlier this week saying that it stands in support with its international students, and that it's working hard to make sure that there are as many in-person class options as possible to accommodate their needs. And since our university plans to adopt a hybrid model for the fall, international students should be able to stay. However, state and local authorities might not allow Drexel to operate that way come the fall. And the ICE guidelines dictate that if the secondary outbreaks prompt a switch to distance learning midterm, it would require international students to leave. Harvard and MIT, who have both announced their plans to operate remotely, have filed lawsuits against ICE's proposed rule. Even though lawsuits usually take a while, and students would have already been deported by the time the rulings had been complete, they are seeking an emergency court order to block this rule as soon as possible. These first hearings will be happening over the course of this week, and the first one actually happened yesterday, but I wrote this before it happened. So quick, go look it up and let me know what they said. Information surrounding this topic is constantly changing, so make sure to keep yourself updated. Continue to circulate and sign petitions asking to let international students stay, because this is not over yet. We all need to take action together for this change to happen. As of today, 18 states are suing to block the Trump administration's visa rule, so hopefully change comes soon. In the meantime, if you're an international student with any questions or concerns, ISSS is offering support. To stay up to date with all of our content, make sure to follow our Instagram at inside_ambition and subscribe to Drexel Television's YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and comment below. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.